Hello everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Matilda and I make videos about books, reading, writing and other things that tickle my fancy. Now I'm in a different setting again today. If you've seen my writing vlogs, you might have seen this before because it's where you should sit. This is my desk, my computer is right over here, and I'm coming at you today with a different video, and I felt the need to be at my desk to make this video. I will forewarn you that there's a mirror right here, so if you see some shadowy movement or I just touched it. So if this looks weird, that's because of the mirror. That's why my outline is right there, but also sort of there. I'm also in a spinny chair, and I know for a fact that I like to spin when I'm on a spinning chair, but I'll try to stay as still as possible for the majority of this video. Alright, let's go. As you can tell from the title of this video, I am going to tell you how to not plan your novel, because I have some thoughts on my own process that I would like to share with you. So first of all, to just preface this whole thing, I call myself a pantser. In the past, I have had the vaguest of ideas and turned that into novels. One of these ideas was from back in, I believe, 2016, where two friends of mine were talking about AI and like lab-grown bodies at the same time as I was watching the TV show Eureka, where, spoilers, someone got a lab-grown body. There was not much to it. It was basically just, yeah, what if someone is not actually a person, but actually an AI downloaded into an artificial lab-grown body. And that was it. That was what I started with. And then that grew and developed into a novel that I have called Alice, that I haven't worked on now for a couple of years, but it turned into a full-length novel. It was probably 60,000 words, I don't remember. I think I still have videos on it on this channel, but either way, it turned into a full-length novel with a lot of flaws in it, granted, but still I turned that tiny little idea into a whole story. That is usually how I go about things. I usually have a small idea, maybe a small concept if I'm lucky, and then I just take that and I start writing, and throughout writing I come up with more and more ideas, and I sort of a little bit outline as I go. Not really outline though, I usually just have an idea for, say I'm writing a dialogue and someone mentions their mother and I'm like, ooh, this could be a plot point, and then I'll just at the bottom of the document or below where I'm at, but before the next scene, if I've been writing out of order, which I usually do, I'll just put in all caps, mention the mom again so that she can do a thing. Not quite that vague, but right now I had no idea for what that could be. This is my process. This has been my process in the past. I have tried outlining in the past, but I was under the assumption back in my younger years, if you were to outline or if you were to plot, you had to have everything figured out before you started writing. And that does not work for me, or it did not work for me then, and I haven't tried in a while, but I kind of don't feel like it's something I want to do. A problem that I mentioned before with me and full-on outlining is that if I have outlined into pretty minuscule details, I feel like there's no point in writing the story because I already know where it's going. I already know what's going to happen, and maybe that doesn't make sense to other people, but it makes some sort of sense to me. That's just how I feel about it, and therefore I shy away from outlining fully like that, and instead prefer to dive in not knowing the whole story. Sometimes I'll still have a beginning, middle, and end when I start, but I'll have no idea how they're gonna get from the beginning to the middle to the end. I like discovering my characters and my world and my plot through writing it, as opposed to sitting down and just brainstorming the whole thing for an extended period of time. However, my current project, April and Other Fools, which I put up the sort of announcement video for, a little bit of backstory for recently, I have actually made an outline for, which, again, if you've seen my A Week in Writing vlogs, you will have seen that big giant sheet of cardboard. And I want to talk a little bit about how that came about happening and how it's also very bad, because there are some flaws in this supposed system that I have used. So I got the idea for April and Other Fools back in April or May. I don't quite remember. I think it must have been May, might have been April. Who knows? It was several months ago and I don't have a good memory, apparently. I got the idea for it and I wish I remembered what the first little spark was. I really don't remember. But I had the idea of someone coming to Gotland, again, I've talked about this before, and basically spend the summer there. Find love, find friendship, spend the summer there. That was it. I quickly knew that there was going to be a female-female romance because, yeah, I'm into that. I wanted to write that. It's been a while since I wrote that. Alice was also a female-female romance. Either way, that was sort of the basic idea. And for a while I considered also mixing in Norse mythology. So maybe having Thor and Loki and, you know, the gods, or having certain creatures or something in this world, in our world, but make it Norse mythology. I wanted to have something sort of like sirens, and I couldn't really work out what I wanted, and I did a bit of research, but I realized kind of quickly that I didn't really feel like going down the paranormal route. Instead, I wanted to make a basically full-on contemporary. I wanted to have something kind of cute and sweet and still important. I feel like sometimes contemporary gets a bad rep because it's like, oh, romance and people are happy and that's it. And that's not the case, and that's also not the case for this story. Yes, there is romance, yes, there are friendships, but there are also several problems. Both my main character and her love interest both have family issues, for example. And I just want to make a point of that some people think contemporary is just like sweet and fluffy, and it's not necessarily. But I decided to make it a contemporary, and I started expanding this idea a little bit. And I wish I would actually have kept track of how I did this, because apparently I don't have a good memory. But I know I ran some things past Marcus, and he came up with some ideas too, and then we just sat down one evening and added to that. Now, I'm gonna enter the first stage as to why this process has not been a good one. Exhibit A is this notebook. This is a great notebook. It's an A6 size, it's very floppy, it's very easy to bring with you, it's great. I've also attached my wristband from Stockholm Pride this year just to have as a bookmark in it, but clearly I'm not using it the right way, am I? This notebook has been with me for a while. I brought it to Japan and I kept track of like my spending and stuff when we were in Japan. I've also written down like video ideas and like the notes for my currently writing tag and books I've been reading and just a bunch of different things. This is the notebook I always carry with me in my bag because it's small enough to fit in most bags. And this is also what I started planning out this novel in. That was a bad move. Basically because it's so small and I felt like I couldn't really write enough per page. I used up like 16 pages to brainstorm just a little bit because well, first of all, I have really bad handwriting. It takes up a lot of space. But it just wasn't the right medium for it. Even though I'm glad I have this and I still, like I said, I carry it with me every day. I can still put notes in it, but I'm also running out of pages in it. And I've done the thing where I've used the notebook both from this end and from this end. So I'm not really keeping track of how many pages I have left in it. And sometimes I apparently just opened a random page and made some notes. And so I'll be writing some notes for the story and then come upon a page that already has words on it for something completely different. But if I flip that page, I have more empty space. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, this is what I started planning out this novel in. It has a lot of notes in it. And Marcus and I did stay up until 4 a.m. one morning in May or June, I think, just adding to this. However, since this is so messy because it was, again, 4 a.m. and I first wrote down all of the different ideas I wanted and then I wrote them down again, trying to put them in a logical order, and then had to add notes to that because the order I put actually wasn't logical and I forgot to put things in. It got messy, right? Now, a few days after we stayed up till 4 a.m. putting those notes in, my friend Elin was coming over. I've talked about her before, and she came over so we could talk about writing, both her novel that she's working on as well as mine. And I was so excited to talk to her about this, but I didn't want to just shove really poorly written notes in her face from this notebook. That is part of the reason why this happened, which, as I've said before, has the week numbers, because here in Sweden, at least, we number our weeks. And this is not, week 1 through week, 15, but the actual weeks that things happen. So it starts on week 20, which is May. During week 22, which is this one, is May 31st. So this is mid-May, which is when my story starts. And it runs from week 20 to week 35. Week 35 is a little bit into September, because currently right now is week 33. This video will probably go up 34. Still, early September. And I made this putting basically the information I've written here onto little post-it notes, and then I pinned those to that cardboard because I don't trust my post-it notes to stay up on anything ever. Either way, I put basically things from on here onto post-it notes and stuck them up on the board. Now I'm gonna roll away again and show you the outline board, and you tell me if you see something that looks a bit like it means something. Look at all these different colors. I have purple and orange and yellow, which is also the week numbers, and I have green. I think those are the only colors I've used. Would you think that they mean something? Yes, so would I. It would have made great sense if yellow meant main plot and orange meant subplot and green meant important piece of dialogue. If it was color-coded, that would surely have helped. This is not color-coded. I think I did all the green ones in one go, and then I ran out of green, and then I used the orange, and then I ran out of those, and then I went on to purple, and so on. This was not all the way thought through. So before my friend came over, I had made that because I wanted a visual overview, as well as I wanted to see how much happens at what point in the story. Because some weeks turned out a lot denser than others. For example, on the first week we have 7 things happening, and then we have 4 the week after and 2 in the week after that. Then, during week 23 and 24, we have one super vague post-it note about, oh, things just happen, life progresses, but it has no actual information on it. And then we move on down to week 26, where I have 9 things. And so it's a bit uneven. That is, however, logical, and each post-it note does not represent a day or a scene. Some of them are just like, I want to have this piece of dialogue, or she writes this email, or there is a pretty sunset. And some of them are like, this is where they have a heart-to-heart about families, and this is when they have their first kiss. Spoilers. And so on. I did that just to get an overview of it. However, since this was so vague, I also wanted to take my notes again from this notebook and print them out on paper more structuredly. I think I did this the night before my friend was about to come over, and I basically just word by word transferred the very poorly scribbled, non-grammatical things from here into a Word document and then printed that. It turned out to be like 3 pages of bullet points. I'm glad I did it, and I also highlighted a couple sections that I was like extra proud of, or really wanted her input on and stuff like that, so I knew to not forget those, which was great. However, I've only used that for that one time and then moved on. I know that when she was here, we were looking at this outline as well as those printed papers. I made notes somewhere, and I thought I made them on the printed document, but that's not true. And it took me a while to realize that I made them in my trusty old notebook in the middle of everything else that's in here. This is a complete mess. I'm a little embarrassed. So I knew I had those notes somewhere, and it took me a while to find them, and I did find them, but then I've never transferred them anywhere. And yes, I do carry that notebook with me all the time, but if I don't look at it and if I don't really use the notes anywhere, am I actually benefiting from it? Who knows? Now, a good thing to do at this point might have been to just sit down, look at the different places, so 3 places where I had notes for this. My notebook, my printed copy, as well as this. And make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be, and that I had everything written down in a clear, constructive, easy to find way. Do you honestly think I did that? Because I didn't. Instead, I decided to download Eon Timeline, which is a computer program where you can make timelines, as you might guess from the name. And since I had this outline and it's very much just a timeline, I decided to put that into Eon Timeline to get an even better grasp of what happens when. And this I have sectioned down by weeks. Eon Timeline I broke down by day as well. And since you can put the time as well into Eon Timeline, I did that for certain things. If something had to happen, you know, in the morning, I made sure to put that at 10 a.m. and not just some point in that day. I did that probably May or early June. We're now about to move into September, unless we've already entered September by the time this goes up, and I have never looked at it again. So that was time well spent. Around the same time, I also decided to use Scrivener, because I have never ever drafted in Scrivener. I usually write my novel in Word, or in my case LibreOffice, but it's basically the same program, and then I will just transfer that into LibreOffice once it's time to edit. I think I do this again because I write out of order, and it's easier for me to just write everything in one place. Sometimes I try to go back to the right place in the document and put it there, but otherwise I'll just add it at the bottom. And then when it's time to edit, I can just copy paste the different scenes into a logical order in Scrivener. But around this time I decided to use Scrivener and basically spend way too much time breaking a Scrivener document down into this exact outline. So I've broken it down into chapters, and then I've put all these post-it notes as individual scenes, even though that's not true. But I just want, since I have them written like this here, why not have them written like that in Scrivener? Probably because doing it in any other way would have made a lot more sense and been a lot more helpful. But at the same time, I also have not used Scrivener since I did that. So I'm doing great on the whole using programs and sticking to one plan. Now you might be thinking that that should be it. That should be the extent of crazy I've been and the extent of using several different programs and outlets for my planning. Now I should just write the book, right? You are correct, but you're also wrong. Sorry to break it to you. I have kept on making notes here without updating anywhere else, without adding to my cardboard board, without adding to the cardboard board, without adding it to Scrivener, my timeline in Eon Timeline, without adding to the LibreOffice document where I made the bullet points. I've never looked at that again. I've also grabbed this notebook, which is, bigger. This is an A5. I've had this since like 7th or 8th grade, where I decided to put different hairstyles on the different cats because why not? I've also had this, which also has everything from video ideas to keeping track of stats to anything else really. And I've put some notes in here as well, because why not mess it up even more for myself, right? But I have now written 38,000 words. As of filming this, I've written 38,000 words of my novel. It's going fine. I am following the outline somewhat, and I've been trying to cross out the post-its that I've actually used. Most of the time I also do right at home at this desk, which means I can just turn my head and see that and know where I am. But I think I would benefit from actually using Eon Timeline just to be able to use it when I'm on the go. Instead, when Marcus and I went to Gotland to be there for a week and a half and do Medieval Week, despite bringing all the files I needed, including the Eon Timeline file, I took pictures of this before I left. I zoomed in on the upcoming post-it notes, took pictures of them all on my phone, and intended to use that if I was gonna write. Now, as you might also know, I have not written for like 2 weeks at this point. 3 weeks? Too many weeks. And so it was actually kind of useless for me to have done that. But why couldn't I just use Eon Timelines? That would have saved me some time for me not having to take pictures. It would save some storage space on my phone. And it just would have made more sense, wouldn't it? Yeah. Also, taking it one step further, guess where else I have made notes? Yeah. So in conclusion, I have 2 different outlines. They're basically the same, but also kind of not. One is right here on the post-it board, and then one is in Eon Timelines, which I haven't opened. My novel is currently in LibreOffice. I've started a file or a project in Scrivener and never looked at it again. I've made notes in, 3 different places throughout the course of this, as well as making the bullet point list in LibreOffice and printing that out months ago and never looking at it again. And I just don't think this is the best way to do things. At the same time though, this has really allowed me to try different methods, even though I've done the same thing, just in different methods. Because again, this is the same thing as an Eon Timeline. The only thing different is that Eon Timeline shows the time of day and the day, but I probably could have just put, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the post-its as well. And I have notes that I always carry with me, and then I have a bigger place to make notes when I have this available. I'm sure this makes some sort of sense to someone. I'm just a little confused why I've chosen to do this, and I figured I would share, have you laugh at me. I don't claim to be an outliner. I don't really plot. This is the closest I've gotten in many years to actually, plot. I think it's funny. More than anything else, I think this whole thing I've done to myself, by myself, at myself, for myself, is funny. I think it shows how chaotic my brain can be sometimes, and it's just funny. Again, I don't claim to be a plotter. I don't claim to know what I'm doing. I also acknowledge that I do know that there are better ways I could have done this. And I just wanted to make this video to show you something a little less structured, because clearly, none of this is structured. Now I have plans when I finish this draft, which does seem like it will take a while because I haven't been writing for a couple of weeks. I do have plans to sit down and redo my outline. That is the thing I normally do anyway when I pants, which is what I do most of the time anyway. I will write the first draft or the 0 draft, depending on how you look at it, and then I will break it down into plot points or a bullet point list or something, and just this is what happens, and then structure it in a better way and base my second draft partly off of that, because if nothing else, I never write things in order, and that forces me to see the order in it once I move on into draft 2, or draft 1, if the first one was a 0 draft. One thing that I'm hoping to do once I'm done with this draft, which I intend to be at the end of September, so I gotta get a move on, is to use a method that I saw Kate Kavanaugh use in her Writing Like J.K. Rowling for 2 days video. I will link that down below. So it's basically a method that J.K. Rowling uses, I'm sure there are other people who do it too, which was called like a plotting table. Basically you break it down into squares, a bit like a chessboard, and then you keep track of like the main plot and the different subplots and what's going on behind the scenes and stuff in a square of squares. I really like that approach. I've never tried it myself, but I do think that it could be good, and I do want to try to do that once I have sort of the skeleton for this story after this draft is over. Anyway, that is it for this video. It was extremely rambly because I just went into this feeling like I wanted to share my stupidity with you. I would like to know in the comments down below if you are a pantser or a plotter or a plantser or a potser, and how you compile your notes and your outlines and how you keep everything organized, because I, for the most part, know in which notebook my things are. But I do think it would help if they were all in one place. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with another video soon, and I will see you then. Bye. I would like to know down below in the comments if you are a pantser or a platter